Hello everyone, today I'm going to be reading Safe House Chapter 1, a Solangelo fanfiction by the goddess Kim. I hope you enjoy. When Nico stepped into the big house, the other counselors were already there. Kyron had called a meeting at breakfast, but Nico had overslept, so he had only heard about it about 5 minutes ago. The moment he opened the doors to the rec room, all eyes were on him and stopped what they were doing. Pollux had paused mid-sentence, Clarice held Connor by his shirt, and Katie and Travis were pulling on either side of something that looked like a deformed spear. "Nico!" Percy jumped up from where he sat at the head of the ping-pong table. He walked around the table and grabbed the son of Hades by the wrist. "Come on, I saved you a seat!" Nico rolled his eyes and freed his wrist from Percy's grip. The silence started to become uncomfortable, so Nico sat down next to Percy. Once Nico sat down, the tension left the room and the chaos started again. Nico let his gaze wander over the room. Most of the other counselors were talking to each other, except for Katie and Travis, who were now yelling. Connor fled from Clarice and was now at the other side of the table, and the counselor of the night cabin, whose name Nico had forgotten, was making dolphin noises, which already got on Nico's nerves. Some of the other kids started joining in, and soon a concert of animal sounds filled the air. With a frown, he noticed that Chiron wasn't there yet, so maybe he was actually on time. As he learned about 2 seconds later, he wasn't. The door opened again, and Chiron trotted into the room. In his arms was a plastic bag full of round objects. "Here they are. As I said before, these balls will help conceal the safe houses." He put the bag on the table when his eyes fell on Nico. "So you finally decided to join us?" he asked, with a hint of amusement in his voice. "Anyway, these concealer balls will put a damper on demigod's scent. It should make it safe enough to live in the mortal world and help out demigods on the run." Chiron kept talking about stuff that Nico didn't understand. He leaned over to Percy, who wasn't really listening. "What's he talking about?" he whispered. "Huh? What?" Percy turned to face Nico, confusion on his face. "What did I miss?" Nico asked again. Percy looked back at Chiron and shrugged. "Something about safe houses and helping demigods?" He looked sheepish. "I didn't really listen." He looked over at Annabeth, who sat at the other side of the table, a dreamy look on his face. "I mean, have you seen her? She looks perfect today." He sighed. Nico glanced over at Annabeth. He couldn't detect anything that was different than normal. He decided to leave Percy to daydreaming and turn the other way. On his other side sat Jason, who was listening with a frown on his face. Nico opened his mouth to ask his question when Jason asked something himself. "But what about our other duties as head counselors?" "These will be taken over by your second-in-command, and you won't really count as full campers anymore, seeing as you won't be living here." Now Nico was completely confused. What did Chiron mean by that? "Do we have to do this, or is it voluntary?" asked Llewellyn. "It is, of course, voluntary, but I would be glad if some of my most trusted campers could do this, seeing as you are more capable of defending yourself." Defending safe houses? What was going on? Nico had enough of not knowing anything. He poked Jason in the ribs, who nearly jumped out of his seat at that. Nico raised an eyebrow. Someone was deep in thought. "What is it?" Jason asked, a bit distracted. "What are they talking about?" Jason had to stifle a laugh. "You sure came late. I don't know if it's too interesting for you, though." Nico sent him a look that clearly said, "Shut up and get on it." This time Jason actually laughed, and Nico hit him against the arm. "Wait, are you serious? You don't know what we're talking about?" "I wouldn't ask if I did." That came out louder than he wanted it to. A few glances were sent in their direction. Nico ignored them. He was good at that. Jason dropped back down to a whisper. "Chiron and Reyna agreed that it'd be a good idea for us to build up safe houses all over Northern America, and maybe even the whole world, so we could help demigods on the run or on their way to camp, make their journey safer." "And how do they plan on doing that?" "We will be monster lunch as soon as any one of us is sent out there." Jason chuckled. "You give Reyna too less credit." Nico clearly did not, but he still didn't understand how that should work. Jason nodded to the plastic bag on the ping-pong table. "That's where these balls come in. They can hide demigod's scent, partly, which makes it a lot safer." Nico noticed the partly, which was probably the reason Chiron wanted them to do it. Even if most of the scent was hidden, there would still be monsters coming after them, so they needed demigods who could defend themselves and others. Nico turned back to Chiron, who was in the middle of rolling out a map of North America. 7 red and 7 green spots were all over the map. One near Mexico City, in the Dominican Republic, in southern Colorado, Vancouver, Chicago, northern Ontario, Montreal, Tennessee, and even Hawaii. The red spots mark safe houses with Greek demigods and the green ones with Roman. You'll be moving in a few days prior to the Romans. Have these balls even been tested before? Asked Katie. Cameron nodded. They have, but we haven't had safe houses before. Katie nodded and looked a lot more relaxed. So if that is all you have on questions, everybody who is interested can stay here, and the rest are allowed to go. No one moved, not even Clovis, who was, wonder over wonder, awake. But that was expected. The offer of staying in the mortal world and leading a somewhat normal life was too good to be turned down. Chiron smiled as if he anticipated it. 5 minutes later, Nico was regretting staying. Chiron had just said that they would be in teams of 2 moving into each safe house. Now everybody was yelling and picking partners, and some were even complaining that their best friends weren't counselors. Chiron was desperately trying to get them to calm down. Suddenly a shrill whistle pierced through the chatter. The sound sent chills down Nico's spine, and his eyes snapped to the source of the sound. Will Solus stood next to Chiron, his arms crossed before his chest and sending glares at everyone who dared complain about the sound. Nico's heart fluttered at the sight of his boyfriend. How about everybody raise their hand before they speak? After most of the present demigods nodded, he sat down and blushed. Will wasn't used to people actually listening to him outside the infirmary. Leo was the first to raise his hand and promptly started speaking. What about the people who aren't counselors? Can we take them with us? Everybody knew who he was speaking about. Leo and Calypso returned to camp about 3 months ago, roughly the same time Will and Nico started dating. And Nico said roughly because neither of them knew for sure when they started. They kissed 3 months and 2 weeks ago. Not that Nico was counting, but first agreed on liking each other about a week later, and then finally spoke about who they were for each other another week later. It was all really confusing. But back on topic, Chiron just explained that to Leo that if the other person agreed and was able to fight good enough, this person could join him. Leo burst into flames at this and sprinted out the door. Some other campers stood up and followed, either searching for a team member or deciding they didn't really want to go out there and just realized it. Annabeth had joined Percy on their side of the table, and they were now talking in hushed voices. Jason was looking for Piper across the table, who seemed not to notice as she was trying to convince Connor to give her dagger back. Clovis went back to sleep and muttered something about McDonald's and a farm. The animal noises earlier seemingly left a lasting impression. So, Jason said, trying to start a conversation with the son of Hades. Nico looked at him. Who are you going to partner up with? Well, he didn't think about that. The moment was saved by Will, who sat in the seat next to Jason that earlier was occupied by Clarice, who probably left in search for her boyfriend. So, Nico, you want to be my partner? Nico looked at him startled. Was he serious? He seriously wanted to spend gods know how long with Nico instead of his friends? Will's face fell. Oh, you've already got someone. No, yes, I would like to be your partner. Will's face lit up and Nico felt like he was staring right into the sun. Will's smile was so bright. That's awesome! Nico blushed in response. But you do know this is a bit more than a school project. Will rolled his eyes, still smiling. Of course I do. Nico couldn't help but smile too. A bit. This is adorable! Nico glared at Jason, who was looking at them with an expression Nico had only ever seen on Children of Aphrodite while talking about their OTP. Will was bright red and stammering something about going back to his own seat. Not a second later, Will was around the table, furiously trying to get rid of the blush. Nico scowled at the son of Jupiter. Great, now you've scared him off. Jason just grinned stupidly and focused on Piper, who finally had her dagger back. Chiron, Annabeth spoke up. Yes? What about school? I wanted to go to college next summer, and we don't know how long this will take. Ah, yes, everyone of you in high school age, which is the majority, will be enrolled in school. Annabeth Percy, if you want, you could skip out or have a city with a college. Annabeth nodded and went back to discussing things with Percy. Wait, we have to go to school? Came a voice from the door. Leo stood there, Calypso behind him, with a horrified expression on his face. Nico rolled his eyes at Leo's antics. Chiron sighed. Yes, Leo, you have to go to school. Because of the constant threat of monster attacks, a lot of campers have to skip out on a good education. This Safe House program will offer you an opportunity to have a good education and maybe later even a good job. You should appreciate it, explained Annabeth before Chiron could say anything. Chiron sent her a grateful look. Everybody knew that Leo listened to Annabeth. Leo still looked disgruntled, but sat down, pulling Calypso in his lap. Leo followed a handful of other campers, Clarice, Chris, Llewellyn, but at the same time, some of the counselors stood up and left the room. As much as that just made sense, we are not going to school, so bye! Travis and Connor fled the room, Katie trailing behind them. In the end, it was only Percy, Annabeth, Jason, Piper, Clarice, Chris, Pollux, Clovis, Leo, Calypso, Llewellyn, Celsi, Will, and Nico himself left. Surprisingly, just enough for every safe house. I knew it would be like this as soon as we mentioned school. I'm surprised you actually want to go to high school. I mean, I only have 3 months of senior year left, but you guys have at least 1 year, Percy said. Nico just shrugged. High school was part of normal life, so he would do that voluntarily if it meant that he didn't have to fight monsters every waking moment. That exact thought was spoken aloud by Clarice, which was surprising and a bit scary. Do you know who of the Roman camp is going? Asked Jason. Chiron shook his head. Are these all the questions you have? All 14 of them nodded. Good, then let's take a look at the locations. Percy, being Percy, was the first to yell, Hawaii! Even though that spot was green. Seaweed brain, muttered Annabeth, and shook her head in amusement. Percy noticed his mistake, declared want of Dominican Republic next. Everybody burst out laughing at that. You can't just say you want it. That is a country, not a toy, Annabeth sighed. What am I going to do with you? Percy looked sheepish and sat down on his chair. Can we have the house here? I speak Spanish after all. And it is in the Caribbean, and only awesome captains of flaming hot warships are allowed to go there. Then I'll be Leo Valdez, the flaming hot pirate captain of the Caribbean. Everybody rolled their eyes at this because it was so typical of Leo. Can we have a workshop there? Asked Calypso. Of course! We can have it on our pirate ship. Then I'm fine with it. Chiron took out a pen and scribbled down their names next to the island. Percy was protesting the whole time. Okay, next. It took a while, but finally everybody had their locations. After a lot of protesting, shouting, threatening, and fighting, every location had 2 names next to it. Chris and Clarice had gotten Mexico City because of Chris's Hispanic heritage. Jason and Piper would be going to Ontario because Piper understood French. Jason wasn't as happy about it, mainly because it would be colder than in camp. Percy wasn't happy about his location either. He was stuck in Virginia. Annabeth, on the other hand, said that the college there had a good architecture program. Clovis and Pollux would be going to a small town in Colorado where, according to Clovis, the best pillows in the world came from. Llewellyn and Celsi had won the fight over Vancouver, which left Nico and Will with Chicago. Neither of them had a problem with that, seeing as how Chicago was relatively monster-free since the Giant War. So now that we have everything, I would like you to go to dinner. Nico was surprised how fast time had gone by, and that none of them had noticed that they'd missed lunch. We meet tomorrow again for detailed information regarding our locations. Then, in the morning of the day after, you will leave for your safe house. Now go. That was Chapter 1 of Safe House. Chapter 2 will be coming soon. I hope you guys enjoyed.